go. Hi, Hanneli.
Hello.
You always have a nice flower arrangement in the background, Hanneli. That's cool.
I don't think Colin's going to be making it. He had to run out for his kids.
Oh, okay. Otherwise, he was trying to drum up participants, it seemed. But anyway, it would be nice if he was there. Well, in part because we're talking about transmedia, whatever that means, or about, what did we call it the last time? I forgot already. Anyway, the idea being finding ways of being present or meeting in...
Was Colin in charge of the title?
No, he wasn't, but it was in part based on that we were talking about, well, different types of media, mind maps, other ways of bringing other types of media into a meeting or being present in those media. So it came out a little bit of some small conversations about that. But that's perfectly fine. So anyway, so for me, transmedia is one word for it, although that might have a more specialized meaning, but it sort of covers multiple media or trying to weave it together, like transmedia experiences will, where did Heine go? Transmedia experiences will usually be, it happens in several different places. Oh, hi, Doug.
Hey, stranger.
Hey, you're looking good. Nice black and white theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, your shirt, your beard, everything is like nicely.
Yeah, well, I'm in sort of a black and white world. I should turn the camera around and you can see the Arctic.
Okay, yeah, you have a bit of a freezing polar thing going on.
Yeah, we're 11 degrees below zero.
That's pretty.
Wind chills take it to about 40 below.
Oh, looks like you're warm inside though this time.
Thank God.
Yeah. Okay, so this is about, in one way or another, how to be present in various types of media. Not necessarily simultaneously, but how can it all be tied together? So it's not just this is one way we're meeting, but it could be various other things. How can we also meet or be present in writing, in real life, in mind maps, in art, in many other kinds of things? And for it not to be something separate, like sometimes when other meeting formats happen, it becomes, so it ends up sort of in a different place and it doesn't really connect up with the other ways we're meeting. People might talk about something in a Facebook thread, which doesn't, it's in a different place than here. So it's, I mean, we might know about it, but it doesn't get woven together. So that's part of what I'm looking for, ways of getting it more, being, no matter what medium it is, that it somehow is connected. And I don't have the answer to how that should be, but part of it could be maybe to have an intention for that, or that there's a certain feel to it. And there could be multiple words for it, but transmedia is one of them. It's used sometimes about storytelling or about games or about presentations that will be an experience in multiple media. So you might have something on a screen, and there might also be something that calls you on your phone, or there might be something to go and see in physically. You might have playing cards. It might all sort of intertwine with each other into a unified experience. And there are games like that, often called, they're alternate reality games, which are sort of like that, where it's a game, but it sort of tries to weave in regular life. So like I said, part of the game might be you get an SMS from a character in a game, and that sort of suddenly seems more real than if it was just on a screen. So there somebody has actually designed the game and painstakingly making it all fit together. So I don't know how that translates into us sort of casually meeting together, but I'm hoping for us to explore that a little more, finding ways of being more present, no matter the medium, or to bring more media into our ways of meeting. One angle to it is simply to have multiple channels. Like, I mean, here we have a chat that goes with this meeting. We can type something there. Potentially different threads could go on there. People might link to something that was mentioned and so forth. And in the past, I have enjoyed conferences that had some kind of back channel. There was particularly, for me at least, a certain period in time, maybe 15 years ago or so, or a little more, where whatever conference I went to, which was usually some sort of techie change the world conference, like anything that can sort of overlap those a little bit. And quite often, it started to be that everybody would bring their computers to a conference, which in itself was new. It used to be you would just sort of sit down and listen to somebody speak on the stage. But then it became everybody had laptop computers, so they would start bringing their computers, which there were pros and cons to that. Some people didn't like it. Everybody's now sitting reading their email. But what also happened was that there started being back channels. So like a conference might even suggest how people would meet in the back channel. At first it was IRC, which was an old internet protocol for chat. It's a little bit technical, but everybody could get to that relatively easily. And then one could sit and chat in that, usually about whatever you're listening to. But if you're bored, you could take it in a different direction, or you can ask questions or give links like we would here. But then it went through several incarnations where the very best thing was, what was it called? I'm forgetting the app right now, but there was, before Google Docs, somebody came up with a shareable document that everybody could edit at the same time. So people could essentially make notes for the meeting, and several people could do it at the same time, and they had different colors, and you can see who was typing what. And that was quite an innovation, because one couldn't do that before, collaborative notes. But then at some point when Twitter emerged, the conferences started suggesting that that Twitter should be the back channel, which never worked very well, because it's hard to find. There's no place to that. Like you don't meet, you don't chat on Twitter really very well. I mean, you're just sort of posting links to things or saying brief statements. So it never really worked very well. And after that, it sort of fizzled out. And I'm not going to very many conferences any longer. But I noticed that there was something that kind of worked for a while and then didn't work so much any longer. But it's an example of being present in several ways. Like you're listening to somebody speaking, but you're also having another conversation. So nobody has to be bored. There's always something for you to do, which is part of what I see in the multimedia thing. You shouldn't have to be stuck with a bunch of boring people not doing what you want to do. If you want to do something else, then sit and doodle on something, or write notes, or make haikus in a chat channel, or whatever you want to do. Anyway, I'm talking way too much. You guys say something.
Fleming, I have a question. Is Colin coming or not?
Stacy said he's picking up his kids or something, but he sounded like he was coming. He was like trying to invite people to come here. So
He was up until the last minute.
oh, okay. Anyway, he has an interest in the topic. I think in part that he's a mind mapper. I've actually started using Coggle, the program that Colin always uses. It takes it's a little bit of a learning curve to use it well without spending all your energy trying to figure out how to make branches, but I do kind of like it.
Well, I have been discussing about this with Colin for quite a while because we have some common language there, and to find language is very difficult. So not to be boring for Colin, who knows all this already, maybe I can show this. Can you see this graph?
I see a screen with basic classes of simulating reality. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Ptolemy conference. I think it was in Madrid 20 years ago. We discussed different levels of reality and how to negotiate between them. And there is the name of Kim Feldman, who was the right hand of McLuhan in the perspective unit, and Tony Judge show up. So I think this is really the advanced edge I wanted to discuss with Colin, and only to make you aware that this issue you're raising here is very central to me and very tricky. And now I have to make sure I'm getting again out of this screen share. Excuse me, I have too many windows open.
Otherwise, I can maybe kick you out. Well, there we are.
Thank you for kicking my ass.
I didn't kick you. It happened.
No, I was fast, I know.
So it relates for me also to some of what you often bring up, Heiner, or sort of ways of being aware of the models you're using and the world you're using. So I think potentially different types of media might make it easier to see more of the person, like not just your face, but like where are you coming from? What part of reality are you talking to right now?
Well, I think what I call multimodal. We as humans are not just in one box with one eye. We can take on many perspectives, many eyes, many positions. We can negotiate frames. And all these discussions of representation is, well, you do it in figures. You do it alphanumeric. You do it through dancing. All this should be possible. And I feel it should not be possible by one and the only and single way of representation, but that we juggle and trickster between the negotiations. We are, through religion and many other ways of mind control, we put, you are small and you have to follow the commandments, and you are stuck in one box. But I think through this modern media and modern ways of building community, we can stay, well, let's step back. This Colin is doing line graphs, mind maps, and whatever. And there is this Harry who is doing beautiful infographics. But how can we bring it together? And can only women do it because they're supposed to be multitasking in the kitchen with the children and whatever they do in the kitchen? But can't we do it all together? Aren't we not all able to do various things? And I learned through wave gliding, and many professions in the sports, that people who can run the waves, they have all their senses, all their attentions, all their feelings together. Otherwise, they wouldn't meet the surf or the tide.
So there's the question, why don't we do it? And I'm just looking at the wonderful poem I think Hannity just posted in the chat. Why don't we all present ourselves in those multiple media at the same time? And one reason is probably, well, a little bit technical, like we have to look around or find and open another window and stuff like that. It takes a lot of attention just to move between them. That's one reason, but another is probably our mindset of being attached to certain ways of meeting. Like I feel a little attached to this particular video format. At the same time, I'm trying to find a way around it. So we're not just looking at each other here, even if that's nice. And part of my experience is that if we change it too much, then people don't really recognize it. Then it doesn't seem like a meeting. Like if we said, let's just meet just in sound, for example, then some people will probably feel, well, it's not quite right, or I can't see people, I don't know what's going on, it's weird. Or meeting just in text. Ideally, it should be all of it at the same time in some kind of fluid way. I don't know.
Well, with Colin last session, we said we should be at least in 3 windows or 3 frames on this monitor. On one part, you are here in your Zoom meeting, and the other is you are in the session with Harry, or the other you are in the mind map of Tony Buzan or Colin, that we leave our own representation or own viewpoint out, because this is a fixation. And I think such possibilities allow us to do great things. Look at Arabic calligraphy. You can do a lot of aesthetic things without using images. So you're not stuck in one mode.
It's also that part of what bothers me a little bit about this way of meeting here is us looking at each other. I would like, or I would enjoy us to look at something together, like that, which is more of the Bohmian dialogue way of looking at it. There's something in the middle of the circle. Let's explore that. I mean, anything can be there and it can go in any direction, but we would be sensing what that is, which is hard to do when we're staring at each other. I don't sense a circle so much. I mean, yeah, I mean, some of that, but I would like the feeling that no matter what media we're in, we're doing it together. So more like a group traveling in different dimensions, more than it's face-to-face looking at each other thing.
So why in the middle? Why isn't it a painting on the wall? With Barbara Max Hubbard, we had the SynCons idea that we really use situation rooms and local rooms and this eye and that eye, and maybe one guy is blind or the other can only see vibrations or infrared. So I think we have to really step out of the box.
I really like where Annalie went. You know, start with nothing, and in it's sort of, it's before you get to the let's enrich the signal and let's add incoming. And this may seem sort of counterintuitive, but sometimes you really have to sort of wipe the canvas slate clean and create the silence and the space in the room for to then deal with incoming. Whether incoming's each other, whether incoming is a thing or common point of focus for, you know, an us, or whether it's, you know, me in relation to a thing. There's something about the existing old paradigm of, I have this feeling that it's got a tremendous interest in keeping me gobsmacked and drowned and overwhelmed and saturated on a push basis, so that I don't exercise discretion, choice, control, authority, agency. I don't have a chance to think about it. And so every time I run into sort of this kind of question about, you know, how do we add more signal? And I'm like, how do we regain agency and control over the signal we're receiving? And I'm very aware that, like, compared to most, and certainly compared to like a younger generation like my son, he's what, 24 today, and my daughter's 27, I can't begin to process at the speed and density of signal that they can, as a fluency. I mean, they just go with it, and I'm like, what? Where did that come? How did you do? Where did that? What did you push? What, you know? It's like I can't keep up. I'm not cognitively wired to even receive it all. So I guess I'm being a contrarian because I'm saying go the other direction. How do we cancel the signal? You know, wipe the slate clean, stop the incoming, and then collectively decide how we want to repaint the canvas. Like, that's a more interesting question for me. You know, like, I found myself going, maybe I should do this.
It's all white, Doug.
That's awesome. That's sort of awesome. Hold on.
The little gray. Okay. Ah.
You literally.
I think it's the snow. I'm getting
It's
snow
funny.
blind.
That's literally out my window. And I think it's part of it is the camera's having a hard time focusing because of the whiteness of it all. Let me go down here where there's a screen. So you can't even really describe. That's wild. Hold on. Yeah, I don't think it's working.
Damn.
That's wild, because literally I'm looking out at the North Pole. And the camera's going, yeah, here's the North Pole. I was hoping you'd have more detail to work off of. But,
Yeah.
you know, but maybe that's apropos with what I'm talking about. And I'm complete.
I did have a realization either the last week or after last week of sort of a change in paradigm about it. Like, so much of what we get in media, like you described, Doug, is being pushed at us. We're having all these little elements, discrete elements pushed at us, and we need to sort of keep up. So yes, do I really want more things to keep up with? No, not really. I would rather change the orientation that I am looking, like instead of like, I gotta process all these things coming in. It's more like I'm here, we're here, and we're looking at stuff and we are decorating it. Like, what do we want here? And that's a different orientation. And also with that orientation, it's more, well, I could say static, although it doesn't have to stay the same. But I would expect that when we put something there, it sort of stays there until we move it, which is not how Facebook and Twitter and everything works. I mean, nothing stays the same. Like if I don't respond to this article right now, I will have trouble finding it in 10 minutes. It will have scrolled off. I need to like it or read it or forward it. So I would like the other way around, a reality with infinite space, but where things sort of stay where you put them. And like if you have a shared memory, you can go back to that memory. It's kind of in the same place. I mean, again, there's lots of room, but you know it's over there to the left, right, in the fifth door. That's the meeting we had last month, and it's still lovely. It's still there. And all our notes and everything, the video, whatever it is still there. So that's what the Facebook, Twitter world tries to get us out of. It kills that possibility, where I would like to look at it as, yes, I have space around me, us as a group, we have space, and I would like to put things there. How do we want to decorate it? And whichever way we decorate it, it should stay there for a little while. It shouldn't just be randomly replaced with other things. I would like to put something on the wall, and if we don't agree on that it should go there, we can talk about it, but then I put it on another wall, but that wall should still be there. And that's kind of a change in paradigm, which the technology right now doesn't support very well. It does to some degree. I mean, you put video, like these videos go on YouTube and they're all still there. They didn't go anywhere. The URL is there. They will probably stay there forever. So you can put documents on the internet and they stay there, but it's still, we're missing sort of the substrate infrastructure to sort of spatially orient ourselves in them. So it doesn't become coherent. It's just, some of the pieces for that are there if we choose to use them differently.
Fleming, I can't resist. You see, what I see, what you are saying is that you are speaking about an index, a pointer. So you can remember and then you can find. Einstein said you should not know. You should only find your way, zurechtfinden, to cope. And that is actually what we tried in studies in the early 90s with the World Bank on the new concept of a World Press Center. I mean, these are very old documents. I might find them. But this was this craziness of what is happening now with our information world, that some people, Peter Thompson, created the idea of such a World Press Center. So not to have information, but to find it. So especially in the newsrooms, if you cannot index that, this news piece is lost. And there we spoke about indexing and meta information, not to have the original information, but to find it in whatever media and ways of representation. And if it's music or sound or heat or whatever. No, anyway, you were ringing a lot of bells, and I really feel sorry that Colin is not here, because this discussion we had in the last session already.
I want to sort of one up you, Heiner. There's a dear friend of mine named Charles Cameron. He may be known to some of you or not, I'm not sure, but he's sort of a modern day monk and scholar. And Charles developed hip bone games, which was an attempt to sort of capture the magic of the glass bead game, Hess's glass bead game. And it's the game of resemblances. And the magic isn't in the data points. It isn't in the knowledge items or memes or things. The magic is in the finding of the connections between the things that we uniquely as human beings can do. And Kath Stiles, who was working at the Australian National Museum, took hip bone games and created a computer version called Semble, which is short for resemble, and did a tablet. And this was, teams of kids would go through the museum, and they would play you would play this game. There was a board with locations and lines that connected them. So you'd make a move by putting a thing on a place. And then the person who made the next move had to establish a connection between those two things. And the person who made the third move had to have the thing they put on the board connect with both of the previous things. And it sort of iterates out from there. So you can imagine it, right? A move that was made by one of the kids on one of the teams was he connected an old, foot pump church organ with a set of slave manacles. So any of you have any idea what the common linkage was?
Religion is enslaving you now.
Music.
So I'll relieve the suspense. So the resemblance he found between these two things was that they both require keys to work. And that's the magic to me. That's the center of the magic as a human being, is to be able to make those leaps and of connection and seeing into and understanding and resonance, and to be able to benefit from others that I didn't get. And so that's sort of like the point of nexus. That's the thing. And it's in application, it's in connection, it's in when we're circled up and together, and we do that with and for each other. So it's less about the artifacts, it's less about the data, it's less about the care feeding and nurturance of zeros and ones. It's more about making it easier or richer or more powerful in the doing of that. If that makes sense, and I'm complete.
Yeah, Doug, what you're speaking about and what Heiner was speaking about brings me also to something that recently gave a name called synchronization points and coherence points. And then there's also power nodes. And the power nodes is where where the strength lies between these synchronization points and coherence points. And I've been in an exercise like that in 2017 with a group of people in Spain, online like we do now. And it was most beautiful how these synchronization points magically just came up, and we could all, like you say, Doug, we could make connections that other people made connections that we couldn't. And it was so enriching and so meaningful that we didn't have to remember the context even. And these synchronization points, and we started mapping them. Like I used to speak about mind mapping, it's very similar, but it's a lot less detail. It's like one word that stuck in a specific person's mind. You just put it down. So it's not a lot of detail. So I'm not sure what Colin is doing, but yeah, so that came up for me when you were speaking about it.
Colin, Hannelise just said your name and you popped out of the blue. That's pretty cool.
Beelzebub.
Well, plug in. And
I feel you were talking about the color yellow for some reason. I don't know.
Yellow. Heine has a yellow chair. I have a yellow jacket.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
I can only see one so far.
Well, plug in, you'll fit right in. Oh, there's a cool blanket.
Heiner and Doug.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to say one thing related to that, which also ties Colin into it. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was at there was a mind mapping presentation as part of it was some Toastmasters training, but there was a mind mapping expert giving a couple of hour presentation kind of thing. And I sort of kindled my interest in doing mind maps. And after that, I started doing little things. I also started using the Coggle program that Colin uses so expertly. I still have a learning curve in that, but part of what that changed for me is realizing how, if I pay attention a little differently to like somebody speaking or what's happening, there's a lot of sort of connections between things that I otherwise easily might miss. And I had kind of a little bit of an epiphany about like even my own day, if I don't take the time to sort of tie all these different threads in my own life just in a normal day together, they're sort of missed like a dream that I didn't write down, that sort of didn't really notice. Lots of things happen and sort of magical pieces show up. And if I don't take a little bit of time to connect and associate things with each other, which a mind map is one way of doing that, or writing, journaling, something like that. But I was a little bit blown away by just realizing just a normal day for me, there's really a lot going on and all sorts of threats and interesting things. And I don't have time to pursue all of it, but just noticing how it ties together and synchronicities and all these things are going on. It's really rather rich, even if I didn't even go outside the house. There's lots of things happen. So there's the potential to be better at doing that as a group like that. And that's really more important than the actual data points, this weaving together the meaning between things like Doug talked about. And there's a question of how to do that. To some degree, we do that in a good conversation, but then how do we capture it? Well, we have a recording, but how many people are going to watch it again? Some people are, but it's hard to capture it, or it could be captured in a mind map. So I think we're a little bit talking about how can we have that overlay of associated meaning and somehow give it continued existence. How can we take that with us without having to replay the whole thing? How can I capture the highlights or the associations and somehow have those weave into something bigger that comes afterwards?
I think the context is appropriate where it's kind of real time and a bit of a history. So I found over time with personal maps, if you're mentioning those, doing research or something can be kind of interesting with those. And when you're not quite certain where you're going, you're exploring a bit, and you know it might be a longer journey than just a simple small thing. So like studying software can take months in different areas, and you come back to a thing and you can take notes right there on the spot, so you can put little trail markers of commands and things you've done. And I've got software trails that are quite interesting. You can think of it that way. But that's a long-term thing. Working with other people and getting attention, that's more of a team building skill, and maybe depending on the group, less longevity to it. You might want to end up with a infographic or something. Nice thing about Coggle is that you can actually print PDFs, and it's sort of a pseudo infographic and it can have links in it, live links, so you can actually share that quite well. I find that I would like to offer to you, Fleming, some tips and tricks about Coggle, because if you're going to do it, there's 3 things that I can give you that you will thank me forever, because the annoyance, cut and pasting things, and different things like that, I can share with you, and probably should. But yeah, I think that's really good. Mind mapping is like, you know, drawing with your imagination. So, and if you can bring other people along with that, which is why I'm thinking about story, would weave it together. It's a slower. There's different modes of memory, and mind maps are in the slow category. So that's to be noted. If you put too much in there, they become polluted, which you can solve with doing submaps. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you. It is a very interesting transmedia way to, it's quick and dirty even, while you're trying to design, which is what you want. Something, you know, people have said the tool isn't the best tool, and I said, well, I'm not looking for the best tool. I'm just trying to think this through, because it's not scalable for many reasons and different things. So that within the time you plan on using it and how you plan on scaling it, it's kind of like you're working with a mind map. You're kind of building blueprints, I guess. It's kind of what it feels like to me. You know, trying to, yeah, so.
Colin, I would love to have you listen to what we did the last 15 minutes, because I think we, at least me, I feel we moved onto another level. Annelies spoke on synchronicity or asynchron, and that is really how we can bridge issues in other cultures, on other scales, in different segments or ways of representation. And that is for me central. The R perspective or the R rational is not the not rational, but it is the extra. So the paradigm as a meta paradigm, including the micro and the meso and the macro, and how different representations where we have been before can help us to see with different eyes from different positions or angles. So actually, this is a fantastic event, even when you're late.
I want to mention something else I discovered recently, which I think relates here, is a sort of game called Derive, which is a type of urban exploration. And it started by a group of crazy people who were fans of, I forgot what, it was some TV show where there was a little town and there was a map of this town where there's the pub and there's the church and so forth. And these people, they got the crazy idea that they took this map of the fictional town on the TV show, and they would go and apply it to some other town, a real world town, which wasn't that town, but they took the map which they had printed out and they tried to make that map fit on the town they lived in. And they looked, well, so the pub should be over there. That's weird. It says post office. Maybe they changed the pub into the post office. They made the map fit on the town they were in, and that made them explore the actual town in a different way. They made a connection that wasn't in reality wasn't necessarily there, but they made the pub fit the post office, and they somehow discovered things that otherwise wouldn't have been there. And somebody has developed, there's actually an app for that called Derive, where the idea is you go to your town, and then this app will essentially draw cards of what to do. So go the third house on the right. see if you can get in and see what's going on there. And you're like, well, third house on the right, okay, there, and the door's locked, but maybe if I ring the bell or something, it makes you do sort of things you would never do, like explore your town in another way. It would. You're supposed to find an artifact to bring home, and you find that to the north or something like that. And the people who designed those cards in that game, they have no idea what town you're in. It doesn't matter at all. But they make you interact with it and weave together things that you might never have dared to weave together otherwise. And that's a little bit like that. The sort of, even a totally fictional way of doing it would allow you to weave things together, and those become more important than what really was there. It's our map of our shared experience that becomes the interesting part, and that sort of fits into what we're talking about there. It's not getting the facts right or having a list of articles. It's more our shared experience traveling through the landscape, which is interesting.
It could show what's missing as well. What's missing from here? Like, where do I find? You could. I see it as comparison, and I think that's maybe what Einar was getting on, comparing from different levels and different angles. You could use that as a template, like a town should have these 20 things, or a child should have these 20 needs taken care of. You know, you could map out where they're missing.
Colin, I shared a moment ago a slide about double augmented realities. So these are names some people might know, and you have seen it before the others. It's David Gelernter or Mankoff speaking about double augmented reality. We are not schizophrenic in just being on one or two level. We are really able as humans with imaginations or with serendipity to blend and merge and morph. And so this you have missed because you are late, but I hope to get back to...
You can just send me the links privately, Heiner, that's fine. I'll catch up.
Just trying to tell you, this crazy thinking was there more than 20 years ago, but how to make it real, how to put, without putting us into psychiatry.
I actually did my thesis on virtual reality back in the middle 90s. Yeah.
Okay, this was 5 years earlier.
You know, Fleming, when you were speaking, something came to mind that could be a lot of fun as well. As we're speaking about these double augmented realities that you mentioned now, Heiner, as well, is to have experiment of, we have a field of dreams. So for a next gathering, we meet on a street corner, wherever we are, and we get a few instructions, not a lot, things to do. You're in France, I'm in South Africa at the moment, and you guys in the US, and I know you are in Germany. Where are you? But that doesn't matter where we are. And we each go through that experience, and we record it. So the focus is not on us, it's what we are seeing. So our cameras are outwards. And at some stage we come together to put it all together to see what each experienced. Something like that. I don't know exactly technically how that can work, but I thought it could be a lot of fun to also open our minds and see each other's reality in a different way. And we're not in our normal spaces.
Totally. Let's do it. So yeah, so sort of an exploration involving our respective local realities in some fashion, and even just doing that and seeing where we are. Maybe I can find a way of weaving in that kind of game I just mentioned, to have a little task of making each of us explore our reality in a different way, or we give each other tasks, something like that. what we want to see more of. That would be fun.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention, Colin, my understanding is you are this mind map Bobfin, which we appreciate. And we all have different types of ways of using our other senses as well. And for example, I draw. When people talk, I just start drawing. I've been doing it since I was a child. I don't look at the paper at all. I don't know what it's going to look like afterwards. You have the mind maps. Somebody else has some other technique. So we have different ways of looking at the same thing, of what was shared and what came up. So that's also enriching the field of our experiences, and we each bring our own different flavor to it.
I find the number one thing that I try to achieve with the maps is clarity of context. So I'll find that when I learn something, I may move a whole section and build room for it. Or it may be that now it's time to summarize, and I'll take a bunch of stuff that is making it messy and put it into another level. So that the level you're at is more real time, an emergence or a progression. As far as the human experience, I think is what you're getting into, and more of the memory of the stories and things. How that's a storytelling element, I think, and it's almost like it turns into movies. And I think that's the augmented reality. With the context, also there seems to be layers of topics where some are more, crisis oriented, problem oriented, and some are more academic. How do we build blueprints and templates for this kind of a problem? So, and being able to speak with somebody and know that these people are at an academic level and these people on get their shovels out level, I think is a big help for these maps too, where you can build the bridge from both ends without, confusing which end of the bridge you're at. Context and just diving into a lot of the stuff, like Heiner says, there's a lot of this stuff has been thought out in many ways, and I think Doug has also said that these things are waiting to be discovered in the right time. So that's why I'm going more for the story element, because the tools have been here a long time, and so it's more about language and cognitive and conversation experiments. So in the academic, but hoping to have the ability to make it concrete at the many levels. And I think that's Heiner's influence as well. I really like that. Neil Davidson, there's all kinds of people with modeling skills, and the storytelling skills with the art. There's people on that end too. So it's a bridging of these diversities. And Fleming is, thinking how he can, been doing this for a long time, how we can spin this together in a meaningful way. So it's very good to be here and watch that. Thank you.
I want to turn the telescope around on you, Colin, for a second, because it occurred to me in this particular conversation, you're actually evolving a practice. You're evolving a new literacy that is its own thing. And the you that does that exhibits some sort of unique properties. Because in order to do what you do, you have to bring all of the cognitive powers that you have, but in a completely open, unconstrained, and unbiased way to process on a real sort of understanding mimetic level all of the inputs and data and signaling and messaging and feeling of what's being shared and what's going on. And because you don't just sort of capture memes. You capture vastly deeper, more profound truths behind those memes in the way you're doing what you're doing. And there's no way for you to do that if your own stuff was competing for your attention, or if you had any agenda to inject or to skew or to distort or to promote your own shtick. So there's a profound neutrality of position in what you do. And it's a very yin-yang thing, because on one hand, it's all of your cognitive ability and intelligence, which is pretty prodigious and extraordinary, in service to whatever others are putting out there, and capturing context and capturing connotation and capturing relationships, and you capture a lot in what you're doing. It's not to sort of refer to it as mind mapping is really doing a disservice, I think, because it's a lot richer and more profound than that. I'm just going to head you off at the pass. So yes, this is a compliment. And so please don't come back with diminishing it, dismissing it, blowing it off, and marginalizing it, which is your way, because it's actually really important and valuable that we recognize what you're doing and its difference, and are able to inquire into that and support it, and nurture it and grow it. And since I'm going to say this in a peculiar way, but I think it's true, at least it's my experience of it, others can weigh in, but you invented something here in terms of your particular practice. It's a new form to me, to my eye. And I think that's worth also talking about and exploring. Like, what is that as a new medium of not just capture, but it's more than just capture, because it's capture plus contextualization. So I'm complete.
Well, I'll say thank you, Doug. That's what you say when someone gives you a compliment, I heard. And my Canadian ness has got to apologize for something. But if anything, it's the fact that I think it's the profoundness of it is in its simplicity of paying attention, I think. And that's what we're about, time and attention. So if you perform that simple act, you notice that I think Fleming hit it when he started to track what he was actually doing. And probably the mirror that reflects what's happening is that in software you call it spaghetti, when you don't have things thought out, ready for change, modularized, understood, contextualized. If you just say, oh, let's just solve this problem and eventually the answer comes out, the next guy that comes to maintain that code is going to be rather upset because the variable names, it doesn't follow any standards. It's like, this guy just learned how to code. And that's what you get. You get spaghetti code, they call it. And the conversations look like spaghetti conversations. So one of the things I noticed in trying to capture and listen was that if I want to get this right and I want to do this seriously, I've got to, the experimenter has to manipulate the experiment. So I see it's 12:59, so and you kind of run me to the end, so I'll just say I don't want to take up all the time. But yeah, paying more attention to what you say and knowing what you want to contribute could be a key in the group environment to bring the mind maps in so that they don't distract, but they aid. So that's one thing I've noticed. And with that, I'm complete.
I find it interesting. Well, all of that. How, like, I would have a hard time using mind maps like that. Like here, for example, I can maybe do it if I'm really just in the audience doing something. But like, for example, here I have too much of an agenda to be able to do a good job.
I think, yeah, I've got some things to say about that. I don't want to run over, but 3 people, you know, 1 person to moderate the conversation, 1 person to be the data butler, mind mapper, and then a participant. You got to show. You know, I mean, 2 would be nice to have 2 people in the audience, but the moderator and 1 person is enough if the person's as interesting, say, as Heiner or somebody with a deep experience that they need to dump. I think we could try that.
So yeah, so it's interesting, this specialization. It's similar with photography. I'm not good at getting good pictures because I'm usually too much part of what's going on to sort of just capture it, which is really annoying. I can't like take a picture before everybody sort of starts posing and interacting with me. So I really appreciate that skill of being kind of neutral at it. And also it's an awkward compliment, but with Colin, actually with you, I noticed your mind maps are kind of more clear than when you speak, which sounds like the opposite of a compliment. But well, what I mean is your mind maps give off tons of meaning. That's things that are captured and connections kind of thing. Which I, in a way, get more clearly than when you're trying to say it directly.
Well, it is a bit of a superpower because the goal is to speak less and say more. So that's a very good compliment, actually, because that means it's succeeding. Where it's failing is where I wanted to interact with people, but it takes time, and you're interested. You've got the software, so you may be a captive audience for a quick tutorial. And I think that's the way we do it as we go. I'd like to start making little mini how-tos on video for different things, like an overview of the map that's already there. So there's different ideas, time depending, but yeah, it's starting to form, and people like Doug encouraging things and adding some value foundation to it. Can't do anything but help it move. I do see it as sort of like glasses or a view on the situation, and I also see it as being a continuation where when we get back after doing this 3 or 4 times, it's like that richness you feel about how my maps speak more than I do. I think your experience with the group will be bigger than you felt before. But it has to be natural, not contrived.
See, it also points at, I mean, there can be other people having other superpowers. Colin has that superpower. What if each of us had some superpower way of dealing with it that left a trail, and that those all wove together? That would be awesome. So we shouldn't depend on, oh, Colin is just going to mind map everything, and then everything will be captured. How genius that is, that's not enough. We need more angles on it to make it richer in other types of media.
As well, me capturing it, it's almost like I feel like Fred Flintstone with the old car where you have to pick the car up and paddle with your feet. That's what I picture what we got right now. Compared, if we had the real thing, then Colin wouldn't have to do anything. It would just, the technology disappears, and you just say, hey Google, I would like to work on that node. You know the node.
So we have sort of passed the hour. So can we summarize what happened here? Transmedia Presencing, did we know? We can't, but well, tell me, did we learn anything? Did we get any further?
I think all our words and all our maps or all our ways to present can be wrong. Only when we negotiate and come, how do you mean in that context, on which level, then we come to build broader realities. And I was trying to bring micro and macro realities or different sector realities together because only when they're on the table or on the monitor, we can negotiate. So Harry and Colin are my heroes here.
Just want to say another angle on it is if we include all the weaving together and the whole context and story, we can't be wrong either. Because I mean, that it's the truth in the way you travel the map. So there's less reason to get into a fight about it.
Yeah, the fool's choices disappear, because the fool's choice is, if it's not this, then it must be that. Well, with maps, it's like the idea is that you have options. So the dream is that they're actually suggestions and guidance, as opposed to maybe some of the false guidance we've had in the past. It has to be very strict and dogma and not personally related. Maybe well-intentioned, but confusing and not so relevant today as it used to be. Not for me, anyway. But
and we are beyond the need to agree. But Stacy, Hen, where are you in all the boys talking?
We do what women do best, listening.
You did very well.
And putting things together.
Yeah, we're leaving the pieces all around the table. Yeah, somebody needs to see how they fit together. Anyway, cool. Any closing remarks from anybody? Otherwise, I thank you all for being here in this Transmedia Presencing experience, and the story will go on in one way or another. It gets richer all the time. So see you again in another incarnation on another path soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.